video during this lockdown period about my journey into sustainable tourism and why, after this coronavirus COVID-19 period, if you haven't booked sustainable tourism previously, then maybe you might like to think about it afterwards. So today I have been posting and talking about community-based tourism and volunteer tourism, and it comes in for quite a bad reputation. And I've certainly added to that in the past. I've been very critical and vociferous. I've previously volunteered myself. I've worked in volunteer tourism. I've led groups, and I have written a master's thesis on the subject. So I've done a lot of research around it, and I had a lot of practical experience, really about what is positive and what's not. And by my reckoning, probably about 95, something like that, percent of the volunteer tourism market is probably has a negative impact. And you can't always tell, easily what does and what doesn't. And that's actually why I wrote my thesis, is that, it's not always obvious. You can't say a charity is good and a commercial company is bad, because that's not true. Actually, organizations can sort of be in the guise of charities and actually not have that much charitable impact, and they can have negative impacts too. And you can have commercial organizations who are really excellent. So you can't judge it on that, and you can't even judge it necessarily on whether it's sort of really skills based or whether it's short term sometimes. So, for example, I've done a lot of volunteering myself, both as a previous volunteer, but as a within work as well. I've dug foundations for schools, and I have painted and plastered, and I have helped in hospices. I've helped install water systems. I've done beach cleans, that sort of thing, obviously, irrigated and planted gardens. Sometimes things are important for aesthetic values to support communities, and it's not just necessarily functional. And some places have been quite harrowing and quite challenging to volunteer in, and those experiences bring us a new perspective. That's quite important to remember now. And what's got me thinking around this time is, obviously, with most people being stuck in at home in lockdown, I'm thinking about the communities abroad who don't have the access to the medical facilities that we do. And we're very lucky, generally, those of us in the developed world, to be experiencing as much as it's a bit of an inconvenience for us. And it's a bit challenging here and there. It's nothing like some of the places that, in developing countries, where they're not going to have the access to the isolation and to the medical facilities we do. So I posted a picture today on Facebook and Instagram, which is me in a Borneo village, actually playing musical instruments with the villagers. And what I did there, I was a group leader for a charity challenge company, and we helped the village dig a trench for about 1 kilometre, and the trench for a water pipe. And it was from a source near the mountainside, of a natural water source, to pump water to the beachside village, so that basically the villagers didn't have to trek a kilometre each way to get water in a bucket. And it meant that the fishermen, when they came in from fishing, they could wash down and get the salt water off them immediately and not have to likewise trek and get a bucket. So it's a quite simple thing. It took 18 people 3 days to do it, and it wasn't particularly skills based. But without it, the fishermen wouldn't have done it, because they're such subsistence fishermen that literally they are out to catch and feed their families on what they catch. And the women aren't going to do it because they're at home looking after the children. So without it, no one's going to do it. And that made a huge difference to those lives. And so, their houses in the future were able to, pipe off the main pipe, a water access to houses. And, water access is something that's a really important sort of thing that we so often take for granted, but often lots of people don't have it. So such a simple thing as with coronavirus at the moment, wash your hands. Lots of places don't have the water access to do that in developing countries. And so, it's quite a worry how much coronavirus is going to spread in places that don't have such facilities. So I have a blog on the website called Top 10 Tips for Ethical Volunteering and community-based travel, and it tells you some of the good things and some of the bad that you need to look out for if you fancy volunteering. We don't have very much on the website on earthchangers.com for the reasons I've mentioned, is that the vast majority of volunteering is negatively impacting, not positive. But obviously what we do have is positive, and I've got enough knowledge to discern what is. And I'm wondering in this time whether after coronavirus lockdown, whether there'll be a rush to volunteer. It happened after Hurricane Katrina and the tsunami in Asia. And actually, that's when the volunteer tourism market grew exponentially. And it was because people had a great empathy for those living in places which were even more greatly affected, obviously, than their homes. So this might happen again. We've yet to see that. But if you are thinking of it, make sure you read that blog first. And let me know if you're interested and I can give you more information. Bye.